হ্যালো, ইজ ইট অডিবল? এটা অডিবল আছে? হ্যাঁ, ঠিক আছে। Good afternoon. So I'm Vishal Pattanaik. My OPSC rank is 41, and my educational background, I'll explain the educational background as well because it is necessary for you to know how the background influences the interview and the process as well. My educational background is that I have a engineering degree, followed by that I have an MBA from XIMB, and then I was working with a bank, after which I came for the preparation of services, both OPSC and UPSC. So these factors are crucial in determining how your interview will go forward as well while you are in the panel. That is why I have informed these things. I'll touch upon them, how they will be utilized. The primary part of the interview process starts when you start filling up the CIF, the biodata form that is there. It is a very short form in case of OPSC, and it is a crisp one. So what is necessary is that you very succinctly highlight what are your strengths there, so that they will be able to probe you in those areas primarily. The CIF will have many aspects which are very basic, as in the education, the name, the address, and everything. The address becomes crucial because address will point out to what district you should be extremely informed about. So the address that you give there will be the source of questions. That is the first point of CIF, that you should have in-depth information about, because your address will be determining questions from the district. Now, what do you understand by the questions from your district? It will primarily be about how the district's GSDP is getting generated. What are the primary contributors to the GSDP in that district? In case of Khorda, let's say, mining won't be a primary contributor, because even in case of Khorda, the maximum mining that we see is primarily sand mining. So the primary mining areas are Jharsuguda. So mining won't be a primary contributor to the economy of the district of Khorda, but it would be for Jharsuguda. So your address is determining how the questions will be asked, and what exactly do you know about the cultural aspects of the district as well. Puri Pipili applic work and how it is made, or Aghurajpur Visayre Jaha Jaha Achi. Apart from that, if you go to Cuttack, then the filigree work, the Durga Puja, those things will come out of it. Apart from the primary economy wala question which I asked, ki whether manufacturing or services or agriculture is contributing primarily to the economy. So you need to go to the district collectorate website, or the district website, district informations given by the agriculture institutes like IARI and others. They will help you out in terms of what is contributing to what kind of plants are being grown there, what is the nature of those plants, Kharif kete, Rabi kete, and what is the kind of practices that are being followed in your district primarily, and if there are any crucial aspects that you should be very well informed about. This becomes the first thing where questions would be getting generated from in the CIF, your address. Now they have not yet come to other parts as well. Just from your address, they are asking you questions. The other point can be your name and its meaning and its derivatives, source, inspiration as well, in case of a peculiar name. For example, my name is Vishal, it won't be causing any form of inquisitiveness inside the interviewer. But a person named Svetlina, or someone with a very complex name per se, may invoke some form of question by the interviewers. So that becomes another component where you should be well informed. Then we come down to education. So in case of people who have graduation only, it's a very easier way out. Otherwise, in case of post-graduation, you would of course be expected to explain at times of course, because everyone won't be asked the same question. If someone is getting asked questions from the address wala part, they may not be getting asked questions from the education, but you need to be prepared in a very holistic manner. That is why I'm elaborating. In case you have got, so let's say in my case, I have done an engineering degree, then I went for an MBA. Now the primary question would be, why did you choose to get into an MBA after an engineering degree? Because that does not connect primarily, because it's a core subject and this is a non-core support function subject, that is MBA. So it becomes crucial that you have a clarity on that as well. So I did not enjoy the engineering subject, or I did not like the particular domain that I was functioning with, and hence I needed a change in opportunity and change in terms of my work environment. If you have worked, that comes down to that part. So having connections is necessary, because people would have done masters. If you have done masters in the same subject, that is brilliant. So it is all well connected and your thought is, so what happens is, when I'm reading your CV or when I'm reading your biodata form, I need to find out a logic and semblance in your thought process. Education determines that a lot. If you have done something, then jump to something else, then jump to something else again, it shows no consistency in your thought process and your decision making, which is an extremely crucial aspect of a civil servant's. Yeah. Now, I have started delving into content, but I'll again come back to why it is necessary for interview and what is interview and its components as well. But I'm explaining that CIF is the first state or first stage of the interview process that you need to prepare, and you are yourself giving the fodder material to the people over there कि नहीं हमको ये questions पूछो और हमको एया ही पचारंतु हमको हमें एया जानी चु, so you need to be very well versed with that. So education as well, again the cities where you would have gone through education. For example, if I had worked in Mumbai, Mumbai becomes a crucial point where they may very well touch upon. If something has happened recently in Mumbai, again it becomes a cherry on the top for them to ask questions. So what I'm trying to tell you is, these are data points that people do not generally prepare upon, because they will generally think कि हाँ ମୁଁ ଏଇଟା ପାଠ ପଢିଛୁ, ମୁଁ ଏଇଟା ପ୍ରିପେୟାର କରିକି ଯିବି, କି ମୋ ଅପସନାଲ ଏଇଟା, ମୁଁ ଏଇଟା ପ୍ରିପେୟାର କରିକି ଯିବି, ବଟ୍ ଏଗୁଡ଼ା ଛାଡ଼ିକି ଯାଇଥିବେ, ଏଗୁଡ଼ା ହିଁ ସେ ପଚାରିବେ, because they would expect you to be aware of any place or any area that you have lived in. The district also resembles that. Your workplace, your education place also resembles the same thing. You have done something outside the state, that also it also brings about the fact you should be informed about that state a bit, not that state per se, but that area specifically, if it is a important area. For example, Jamshedpur re jodi ke पढ़िचंती तो Jamshedpur बिषय questions आसार chances बहुत बेसी हे जाउछ, and it is very easy for them, because they would have been asking questions about Bhubaneswar, Cuttack, Puri, Dhenkanal, Rourkela. So they have also been done up, they have also exhausted their own set of questions. Now they want to touch upon new things, and if you're giving them something new, they will be more than happy. Now, after the education part, there will be other simpler parts as well, which are easy, but then hobby and achievements are two extra areas where they would generally want to ask you about. Now, hobby is something that you would of course have a hold on, considering it is your hobby. And if you do not have a hold on a hobby that you generally like because of the preparation and its process and its needs from an individual, start preparing for that hobby. For example, if a person is aware of badminton, or as in hobby is badminton, then you'll have to be well versed with Olympics ka development. Apart from that, the rules and regulations determining the game, the necessities and the rankings of players, and the efforts that have been taken by the government of Odisha, primarily because Odisha has been focusing a lot on sports. The present budget also is 1300 crores in terms of allocation for sports, and that is the highest amidst all states of India, which is a important thing. So you need to be aware, and if you, even if they do not ask you, if you are highlighting that and you have sports as your hobby, then they are surely going to be impressed with the fact that you are aware that this is something the state is putting in efforts, and this person also knows. For example, football would be a primary area of interest for many people, at least watching would be. The efforts that have been taken by the state government for football as well, which are not that well known, but an officer or a to-be officer has to be aware of them as well. For example, FIFA certified grounds are there in this state. 7 FIFA certified grounds are there. Apart from that, the football, the under 19 FIFA World Cup was also going to be organized for women, was going to be organized in Bhubaneswar. So these efforts are also there. So what I'm trying to say is, primarily for boys or even girls who get into sports or sports as a hobby should be aware of Odisha's efforts. Apart from knowing the rules and regulations, the rankings, the developments that have happened in Olympics. ठीक है, this is hobby का just one point. Hobby can be something else. Hobby can be reading books as well. But when hobby is a topic that is to be discussed and they want to ask you questions, if I go on to write reading, let's say reading books, someone has written. So what you are doing is you are expanding the gamut of questions that they can ask. So limit it. Primarily start limiting it from your CIF itself. Reading books, reading English books on certain things or certain objects, or reading Odia books or Odia novels, right? So what is happening is, because of you mentioning Odia novels, what you're doing is you're limiting it to novels only. They cannot ask you about poetry. They won't try to ask. Even if they ask, you have the leeway ki nahi sir, mu jani nahi, mate jana nahi eta, to mu kichhi kar paribi eta bisare, koi de pariyo, sorry sir, I'm unaware about it. And whenever he responds, you go on to say ki nahi, theek achi, I'll go and read about it sir, thank you for letting me know. So what becomes crucial is you start thinking in a way that the person is going to think. That will help you out in a lot of way in terms of making your process of interview easy. You start limiting your hobby. If you watch football, watching football. If you write poetries, writing poetries, or writing reflective poetries, or writing some form of sonnets, or limit it as much as possible so that they delve into it, as well as they do not have the leverage on you in terms of asking questions. If they get the leverage on you, then it is not your hobby anymore, it is their game that you are playing. So prevent yourself from doing that. That is why hobby is very crucial, and it needs to be prepared in a very thoughtful manner, because it is other areas it is not expected of you to be prepared. That is how interview functions. But in case of hobby, you are practicing it. You are supposed to be practicing it as frequently as possible, and hence it is necessary on your part to know about. And if you're just doing it without knowing its nitty-gritties, then there is no semblance of logic in you, which is again a deficient quality, which would not be something that civil servants are supposed to be or expected to possess at least. So that becomes there. So hobby and achievements. The next part is achievements. The primarily 4 areas of question is what I'm trying to tell you: the address and the name, the educational areas and the educational degrees that we'll come to later, the hobbies, and the achievements. Achievements is again something that you would have done. Do not go into very standard 1 रे या करथली, standard 5 रे या करथली. Make it very recent. It's fine to have your achievement blank as well. It is just a point for them to ask you questions. If you do not give it to them, it's fine with them. They will ask you questions anyways. It is not like they have deficiency of questions. But achievement thile kaun hue na, the person creates an impression immediately, and that advantage is something that he can carry. But it can also reverse and reverse back in terms ki that person is not prepared with that achievement, or something new would have happened and that person may not be aware. तो से गुड़ा सब इश्यूज है जाए. तो इट इज बेटर कि जब एनसीसी विषय बहुत जन लिखती, एनसीसी रो जो सी सर्टिफिकेट और बी सर्टिफिकेट सब मिले बहुत लोक लिखती कि राष्ट्रपति भवन जाई था एनसीसी रो ये रे कि को ओलंपियाड्स पाई थिला, कि को डिबेट्स जीती थिला, सब लिखती. गुड इनफ इफ यू राइट, बट इफ यू डू नॉट राइट, डू नॉट फील depressed about it or in any way deficient, because if you force yourself to write something, you will have to justify it there, and that again requires more effort. It is better to prepare those things that you are for sure going to write. So it is better कि सेगुड़ा ऊपर बेसी फोकस करे than जबरदस्ती भर्ती करिया पेपर. 4टा लाइन थिबो, let it be blank. ठीक अछि, there is nothing to be worried about. This is what is CIF Sarla. Now I'll come down to interview as a process and how interview is going to happen. So interview in general my degree is also MBA in human resources. So I have been taking interviews for a long time before joining the services. So interview primarily, can interview be a process of equals or an interaction of equals? It can be at times when a reporter is interviewing a person on the road about some incident. But this interview is not a reporter wala process or a equals ka interaction. That is the first thing that you need to put it in your mind. This is not a balanced situation. They are at a very high advantage and we are at a very high disadvantage. Nahele bhi tanko comparatively we are not at an advantage. We have no high handedness there, and it is necessary because it is going to bring out the best and the most social aspect of you out. Because when you are going to walk through or function in the society, you are going to interact in a certain manner, and that is what is expected out of you there. That is how you will be conducting yourself throughout the public sphere, is what is the expectation. So interview is not a interaction of equals. You are obliged to respect and answer these people because they have very huge experience. For example, my panel was chaired by the chairman of OPSC, who was an erstwhile DG rank IPS officer, Satyajit Mahanti, Dr. Satyajit Mahanti, IPS. He was chairing the panel, my panel, and he was also the then chairman of OPSC. Now, if I'm not going to think of him in that way, it is not going to bring, I will not be putting in efforts in my part to bring out the best in me. That is what I'm trying to tell you, that you will have to stretch yourself to bring out the best, because the people who are sitting on the other side are trying to judge you for sure. There is no question that they are not judging you, but they are giving you ample opportunities to get yourself judged in a better and a holistic manner. What will happen is primarily there will be a person sitting Mojire, je ki OPSC ro jane member thibe. So there presently, I guess there are 6 or 5 members. When I was getting interviewed, there are 7 members. Now there are 7 members means 7 panels will be established. Now 7 panels will be established with the member at the center who is the chair of that board, and there are 2 other people who could be a present state or civil servant or former civil servant, and a faculty or a professor or a lecturer from some dignified university or a institution. So these are the 3 people who would primarily be taking. There will be 3 people in this interview process. Now, since it's a panel-based process, your panels will be assigned randomly. So you can be put into anyone's interview panel or slot. So one of the best ways would be to know about the profiles of these 7 members or 5 members or 6 members. It is already available in the OPSC website. Be informed about their profiles. It is extremely crucial, because then you will have some semblance of comfort in you that I know what his inclination is. Yes. OPSC website, right, is there. हाँ नहीं गूगल करे दरकार नहीं. So OPSC website रे all the members of OPSC करो, profiles are there, biodata. Yeah हाँ beforehand, yes, because members are not going to change. The members of the panel will change. Members of OPSC are not going to change, but the chairman of the panel is of course going to be a member of OPSC only. So the other 2 members will of course influence the interview board, but the chairman is always going to be someone you already know about. They could possibly be from some college that you would have passed out of, and if that is the case, then you know very well that that kind of question is probably going to come out. It is expected of them. And if the subject is similar, let's say the person has done a master's in international relations and my optional is PSIR, I am going to expect such questions from him because it is his area of interest. He is possibly going to ask such questions or probe me in those areas, and I should be at least prepared about that, even if not prepared with the content, but prepared psychologically that these are the areas that he may touch upon. If he does not, that is fine, but we have to do it in a holistic manner, is what I am trying to tell you. So be prepared with the profile of the people who are going to be present in the interview. That helps in terms of understanding what is the psyche with which the person would be coming into the panel and would be expecting of you as well. So yeah, as I was saying, the interview would go on whereby the chairman would be asking first, and then he'll or she'll pass it over to someone else. That person will again pass it over to the third member, and post that, if the chairman wants, the chairman can again probe further, and if he does not want, he may mention ki, no, your interview is over, you may please leave. So what comes down here is your interaction with the three members have to be balanced. You cannot weigh in. You know very well that the chairman is extremely crucial, but that does not mean you differentiate between the three members. On your side, you have to be very courteous with all of them. Courtesy is extremely crucial. Argument of any sake is not expected. Have some logic of semblance of logic in you. Sir, I would beg to differ from your point of view, and I would like to say this. If he again counters, understood, sir, I'll surely read about it when I go back, is the best answer that you can. Do not in any terms negotiate or argue with them, because it is a interaction of unequals, as I had already began with. So do not in any terms, because you are not going to establish any form of validity on your part by arguing with them. You cannot dominate over them. That is what I'm trying to establish, because there are people who feel like they should. The other thing is ki you are obliged to answer. They may not expect something of you, is a different thing, but if they are asking you a question, you are obliged to answer. You are not obliged to stare at them and sit or wait for as long as you want. When a question appears in front of you, if you do not know about it, then ask them, sir, may I take some moment, or ma'am, may I take some moment to think about it, and then answer it. If you do not know the answer, also answer it by saying, sir, I am unaware about the same. I'll surely read about it when I go back. These phrases are extremely necessary. Saying sorry, saying I do not know about it, saying I'll read about it when I go back, sir, saying may I think about the question for some time, will help you in terms of driving your interview in a very logical manner. Bluffing there would only mean you feel like that person would not be aware of what the question, whatever the question they are asking. It is not a gamut that it is not a game that we should be playing, considering it is again unequals ka interaction. If they know by some reason, then that would put us at a permanent disadvantage, because immediately personality asijiba ki nahi, this person is going to bluff throughout the interview, or at least going to lie throughout the interview. That is not something that you want yourself to be immediately judged as. So interview re एटा ensure करिबा अछि कि म courteous रहिबी, interactions सेमति जेमति रहिबा, argument करिबी नाही, आउ आंसर्स मते आसुथिले जेतंती आंसर देबी, न आसुथिले भी आंसर देबी, कहिबी जी सर आई एम अनअवेयर एंड आई विल रिक्वायर सम टाइम टू रीड अबाउट इट, और आई विल रीड अबाउट इट व्हेन आई गो बैक. ठीक अछि, दैट इज इट. दैट इज प्राइमरीली व्हाट would help you in terms of making it smooth. ठीक अछि. So if I there is another requirement. See, even though it is not an interaction of equals, confidence is something that is expected out of you. It's an oxymoron wala state, a paradox that is getting created, that the person, we already know that the person is very powerful and may actually influence our career, yet we are supposed to be confident. The reason is because it's an interaction of civilized people. It is expected that if you know, you will answer in a civilized manner, and hence the confidence exudes from the fact that you are not dominant, but rather you are informed. So confidence and interacting with unequals are two mutually exclusive things, is what I'm trying to tell you. You have to be very confident, and in no way, please prevent yourself from mentioning such things. They may probably ask you as to, are you nervous, or are you troubled, or are you feeling uneasy? You do not have to accept those things and make yourself feel vulnerable, because that person who is interacting with you is not your friend, not your ghara loko. So in no way we need to interact with them in those pages. So no sir, I'm fine, I'll settle down sir, I'll gradually settle down, don't worry nahi bolna, don't worry nahi bolna, but then you'll have to let them know ki nahi, I'll settle down sir, it's fine sir, It's fine is the best way, because if you are, because at times we are actually nervous and it is visible to the person who's looking at us. It may not be visible to us. If the chairs are bit far from the board, then they can probably see your legs shaking, your hand shivering and everything. And if that is the case, they'll probably go on to ask, do you want some water? If they are offering water, and if you want to have water, you can have water. But then again, once you take the water, take the glass of water, how do you put it back? There are too many complications that are going to arise, because these interactions are not of equals. You cannot put it back there itself. And who will you put it back in front of? You're sitting in front of the chairman. Chairman अगर थोड़ी देर ग्लास टा पुणी अबागे दुसिबो तो पुणी तांको फेरेइबो कि sir can I return it back? What do you have to do about it? So do not accept such courtesies. Do not answer to such courtesies in a manner that they would think कि हाँ, this person is very clear and frank with us. They do not want you to be clear and frank. They know very well कि you would be knowing some other options and other thought processes, embodying some other values. But what is necessary of you is to carry yourself in a manner as is expected of a civil servant, and these are established values that are expected. Ethics paper thila na, so you already know what are the values that are expected. Epon to not thila. Now you already know what are the values that are expected of you, and those values are something that you have to exude immediately. Tahali hi तांको से येटा मिली जिबो जे नाइ ठीक अछि. Frankness was never a value where माने जति के answers लिखिथिबो. So that is what is primary. So confidence is crucial. Confidence सबु answering रो part रे भी आसीबो. Confidence सबु answer interaction सहित सब प्रति answer सहित आसीबो. Confidence सेते बेले भी दरकार हो जतरा answer आसु नथिबो किंबा सी बहुत लोक थांती जेमति कि मु गोटे answer देली and the immediate response was, is it? I don't think so. You can either continue saying ki sir, I think sir, I think that is what is right. As far as I have read, that is what I think is right. Is it? I don't think so. I think something else. Sir, I am unaware. I'll surely read about it. You reinforced once, that is your stance. The second part is you succumbed to his pressure because he was pressurizing you. I don't want to argue with you. That is, it is as simple as that. So that is how the interaction would be. And let's say that person is saying you're bluffing, you're saying lies, or you are trying to play with us. There will be someone who may try to create a situation of pressure. The pressure interviews ହେଇଗଲା माने tension ହେଇଯିବ बहुत एंतरे भी सेतेबेले भी confidence exude करिया दरकार. It may be easier for me to speak, it is going to be very difficult for you to execute, or anyone per se, because if a person is actually blaming you already or pointing fingers at you, you feel very nervous because that person is way more powerful again. So सेथिपाई execute करिया दरकार. Sorry sir, I did not know कि this is the right thing. I'll surely read about it. I apologize. Apology and smiling while apologizing has earned people more marks than answering questions, because while answering questions, people at times end up being very egotistic. Egoist and egotist are two different things. Egoist may seem like a person who has a lot of ego. Egotist is someone who talks ego. So while answering a well-informed person, at times may end up sounding egotistic. And an egotistic person is not someone who at least they will be handling, because they have been through so many people throughout their life. They are not at the mercy of you or your egotism at least. That is necessary that you have confidence. Now we'll go to interviews. Interviews का introduction. Myself, Vishal नहीं बोलना है, नहीं एटा कहिबा नहीं. Myself नहीं, I am. That is the right structure. Myself is a very wrong structure of answering questions, or at least starting with the introduction. It is extremely bad if you say myself. Mine. I am Vishal Pattanaik. I'm presently an OFS officer of 2021 batch, undergoing training. This is what I'm doing. This is where my education has been. Born and brought up here. That is it. No bapa ma ghara katha kichhi au kahiba nahi, because they have not asked you to introduce everything. Son of, daughter of, आमे कोठी लेखु भी ना हो तो तार बापा माँ को विषय कहया दरकार नहीं. They go on to if they probe you further. Let's say a person of sociology is sitting and they go on to ask you who all are there in your family. And that person says ki my grandfather is there, my grandmother is there, my father is there, my mother is there, my younger sibling is there, and my wife is there. Let's say someone answers it in such manner. Then the reason why they are asking is probably they are going to ask you whether you stay in a nuclear family or a joint family. What is the structure of the family that you're staying in? And why is it nuclear or why is it joint? Does it exhibit all the properties of joint family? That is the nature of question that they're looking for, and that is why they are asking. Otherwise, they will not generally go on to ask you who is he, who's ମାନେ କେତେ ଜଣ ଅଛନ୍ତି, କାହିଁକି ଅଛନ୍ତି, କ'ଣ ପାଇଁ ଅଛନ୍ତି, ପଚାରିବେନି. Or they may end up asking you about your father's work at times. What does your father do? What does your mother do? And the basic interactions on the same. That can at times go on. So be aware of what your parents are doing, what their designation is, and what they are expected to do in general. ठीक है. तो एबे आसीबा आमे hobbies. हाँ sure. Exactly. So I'll come back to that. Hobbies रे कौन हुए? Now let's say someone does not have a hobby. Achievement no रहिबा is fine. Hobby no रहिबा is not. Because that means that person has not in any way diversified his or her personality. So if a person has not prepared hobby sette bhalo se, that person may be ori in terms of answering or mentioning the hobby. But if you're very strong, you're very confident, and your hobby is something very different. For example, most of my batchmate jane syllabus officer ache, se mixed martial arts karithila. Now he was mentioning that in his introduction. But it was so out of the blue for them that even they did not know what to ask in terms of question. It can be that end as well. So it is a spectrum. If you are very well aware of your hobby, please mention that. And rather mention that in any case, because it will actually invoke questions which you may answer. Hobby prepare करके जाइथिबो. मझी मझी रे अच्छो जदि तमे hobby prepare एते भल से हेइनी because of some XYZ reason. For example, एबे 2-3 दिन रे रिजल्ट बाहर जिवो, आउ 2-3 दिन परे तमर थिबो फर्स्ट जदि भाबो. ताले तुम hobby एते prepare करि न पारो, ताले तुम hobby mention करनी. When they get down to that, you answer certain questions whatever they ask, and if you do not know about that, you say कि नहीं आसुनी. मेंशन करा हबो. Exactly. करी सीआईएफ रे ना लिखा है निकी, सीआईएफ रे एजुकेशन लिखा है निकी, सीआईएफ रे सब दिन से लिखा है जी. बट इंट्रोड्यूस योरसेल्फ रे जनरली एटा कुहा हुए. बट बे म आसुची लास्ट ईयर टू जो चेंज टा आसची, they have started asking you introduce yourself without mentioning your name. The reason being they do not want to discriminate anyone in terms of religion, caste, creed, or any other form of identity that is already assigned to that individual and may cause some form of disadvantage to that person. For example, some form of caste bias may exist, which is very much evident from the surname of that individual. So if that is the case, then it may cause marks to be debilitated for you specifically, or for someone who is from a certain caste, or for someone who is not, who they are antithetical to. That is why names are not getting asked. So what you need to do is you introduce yourself without your name. So you need to give something which is very good fodder material for them. So hobby becomes a good fodder material. When you mention it, and that person becomes interested in it. For example, my hobby was reflective poetry writing reflective poetries. Now immediately a person's attention was getting dragged to that. What is reflective? What is poetry? Why are you mentioning reflective poetry? How is it different from poetry? Is what the sequence of questions were. Where it was very different for someone to write reflective poetry. Since it was written, so there was a difference getting created, and that person was also attracted to that and asked certain questions. So what I'm trying to tell you is whatever you are very well versed with, mention that. People can also mention their achievements. If someone has already done something brilliant or published some paper which has been internationally acclaimed, or done something great, or or received a medal from Rashtrapati or someone of a brilliant constitutional structure, that person should mention that, because that will immediately attract their attention. What is to be mentioned in introduction is your ball game. You decide what fodder is to be given to them so that you can answer it properly, and the ball is not in their court, it is in your court. That is what you have to establish through the introduction. So it is better to give tail elements there. Tail माने सेटा तापरे सेटा चालिबो, सेइटरु ही चालिबो. से आगु तुम पचरिबेन तम एजुकेशन कोन थिला, से सेइटु ही चालिथिबो बहुत टाइम सेइथरे पळेबो. तो सेमती करंती करिबा भी कथा. But if you are very well prepared, as I told you, if you are not prepared, then do not do that, because it will be a blunder. हॉबी मेंशन भी होची, क्वेश्चन पचारिबे कहि भी होबनी कम दिन अछि बोली प्रिपेयर करा हेनी बोली. तापरे कंटेंट आमे को हिसाब रे बेसिस रे प्राइमरीली कंटेंट एई 6टा ग्राउंड से प्रिपेयर करा हुए. One is the optional that you are of course preparing for. मते मो ऑप्शनल वाज एंथ्रोपोलॉजी एंड पब्लिक एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन. Public administration is being the second optional that I have taken for OPSC. तो मते एंथ्रोपोलॉजी रू भी दीटा क्वेश्चन पचारछंती, पबैड रू भी दीटा क्वेश्चन पचारछंती. पबैड रू because I had worked with corporate, the immediate question was how is public and private administration different? What is supposed to be the function of human resource in both of them? And where is human resource more stronger? Because my degree is human resource, my master's degree. So it है optional subjects. Then there is graduation subjects. Graduation subject be crucial. For example, if anyone is are you an engineer or something? Engineer के भी ना भल कथा. तो इंजीनियर को बहुत जन भूली जाई थांती कना से सब्जेक्ट से तो किछि लेना देना न था ताकर बहुत दिन रु ऑप्शनल तो मोस्टली सोशल साइंसेस रु नै की पढ़ी थांती. तो प्राइमरी सब्जेक्ट भूली जाई थांती. तो प्राइमरी सब्जेक्ट भूली गले, यू विल हैव टू फाइंड आउट वेज टू एटलीस्ट नो द बेसिक थिंग्स. फॉर एग्जांपल, आई एम एन इलेक्ट्रिकल इंजीनियर. Ohm's law was asked. Ohm's law is something that everyone reads 10th 12th में तो पढ़ती ही. Ohm's law was asked. What is the difference between a generator and a motor? These are very basic questions, but you should be aware of them, so that at least when they throw such questions at you, you are aware कि your degree विषय जोटा primarily पचर हबो. botany और zoology वाला को taxonomy immediately पचार देबे कि छोटे taxonomy पचार देले कि taxonomy definition पचार देले कि father of ये एटा सब समस्त जानि थांती कना आरंभ चैप्टर जोटा प्रति सब्जेक्ट रो किछि ना किछि बाटे समस्त पढ़ी थांती. तो सेति में सेही जिंस गुडा पिसरे टिके अवेयर रहबा दरकार. ग्रेजुएशन पोस्ट ग्रेजुएशन हेला आल्सो द सेम, यू विल हैव टू बी अवेयर अबाउट दोस सब्जेक्ट्स कर रिक्वायरमेंट. तापरे हाँ कौन गला ऑप्शनल गला, ग्रेजुएशन गला, पोस्ट ग्रेजुएशन गला. देन देयर इज द स्टेट विषय इन्फॉर्मेशन. सिंस यू हैव ऑलरेडी स्टार्टेड प्रिपेयरिंग ओडिसा रो general knowledge and Odisha current affairs, that is good, but everyone is expected. What is your option? Sociology. So everyone is expected to know about Odisha basic static parts. For example, anthropology optional. Now there are 13 PVTG tribes in Odisha. You need to be aware of all 13 names. They end up asking you, what will you do? There is no way out here, escape it ही नहीं, because more optional भी anthropology, more state भी होता tribal state, and if I am unaware of such things, it is as if I have not prepared. Sociology, the demographic aspects, the intersectionalities that are playing out in the state, बहुत necessary. Where religions are, which religions are blooming, which religions are shrinking, को areas रे को religions bloom करूची, काहे की करूची, केते proselytization होउची, केते एक्सटेंट रो कन्वर्जेंस होउची, सेगुडा सब भी थिबा दरकार होल्ड रे हैला. होम साइंस, व्हाट आर प्रैक्टिसेस दैट आर गेटिंग एक्नॉलेज्ड रिसेंटली which have been taken up by tribals and traditional indigenous people inside the state. For example, Koraput ro jota under sea level rice culture, rice farming systems, बहुत ट्रेडिशनल सिस्टम्स अच्छी जोड़ा कि आम ऑलरेडी प्रैक्टिस करूचु. होम साइंस से थ्रू ही डिराइव है कि किछिटा स्टैंडर्डाइज सिस्टम्स को एस्टैब्लिश करिछि. से जो प्रैक्टिसेस गुडा जोटा ट्रेडिशनली अवेलेबल अच्छी सब बेले सेडा सब जानिया दरकार. होम साइंस रो तम अच्छा फॉर एग्जांपल ड्रेपिंग को डिस्ट्रिक्ट रे बना हुए, इफ यू नो ड्रेप्स माने पर्दा को डिस्ट्रिक्ट रे बना हुए, सेटा कोन तार ना जानछ, खोर्धा रे बना हुए, तार ना हला कला पत्थर काम, कला पत्थर पर्दा को हवे, कला पत्थर पर्दा, कला पत्थर गामुछा हैला. these are some things which you should be aware of as home science as an optional, and this is specific to your state. This is not current affairs, this is static. It is expected of you to know. People applic work समते जानी चंती, but कला पत्थर विषय जानी नहांती. धला पत्थर काम गुड़ा सब इठी हुए, खोर्धारे हुए, और ड्रेपिंग और गामुछा ही प्राइमरली धला पत्थर कामटा करा हुए. तो से गला. तो वो ऑप्शनल टाकू सेति पई मेक श्योर कि ऑप्शनल रो स्टेट स्पेसिफिक एस्पेक्ट्स गुड़ा जणा थिबो, प्लस स्टेट रो स्पेसिफिक किछिटा टेक्निकल जिंस जणा थिबो. जेमती ओडिस पंजाब इज कॉल्ड पंजाब बिकॉज इट हैज 5 rivers flowing through it, is what is the definition, right? What is the etymology of Odisha? Odisha शब्दटी आसीची कोठू, एटिमोलॉजी कौन ओडिसा रो, को शब्द रु सेटा इंस्पायर्ड, कौन तार आग ना गुड़ा थी उड्र उड्र उत्कल कलिंग से सब ना गुड़ार प्रति ना गुड़ाकर किसी गोटे मीनिंग अच्छी से गुड़ा सब जानी दिस आर स्टैटिक हिस्ट्री इट इज एक्सट्रीमली एसेंशियल दैट यू आर अवेयर ओडिशा इज द हेक्साडेल्टिक सिस्टम हेक्साडेल्टिक माने 6टा रिवर्स कर डेल्टा अच्छी ओडिशार ये रे कोस्ट लाइन में सेति में हेक्साडेल्टिक माने आई शुड बी अवेयर ऑफ ऑल द 6 rivers and the deltas that are getting formed out of it so that is necessary कि you are aware of hexadeltic system Odisha's physiography Odisha's basic divisions of the map it is expected out of everyone hela current affairs ette न पचारि पारंती because that person when that person is reading a newspaper आमे जेते कष्ट करिकी ओडिशा करंट अफेयर्स पढ़िबा प्रिलिम्स रे आसी पारिबो बिकॉज द पर्सन इज क्रिएटिंग क्वेश्चंस विथ द टारगेट कि आई विल आस्क ओडिशा करंट अफेयर्स बट दिस पर्सन इज जस्ट रीडिंग न्यूज़पेपर्स द पर्सन हु इज गोइंग टू आस्क यू क्वेश्चंस ही हैज जस्ट रेड अ न्यूज़पेपर सिस दिन सकाळे and primarily it would be an English newspaper and an Odia newspaper जहाँ भी current affairs थी they won't be current affair they would be कि काहा को मारी देला कि कोठी चोरी होला कौन गोटे ड्रामा होला एई गुडा सब so what is the current affair in it primarily you will have to be very strong with Odisha basics which are static history part kichita geography part kichita society and demography part kichita tribal variable seithre society re hi asibe culture part kichita please understand and start learning about the GI tag things so at least जानी थाओ जे कौन एमती धला पत्थर कहला बेलू अचिन्हा न लागू से पत्थर काम भाया न लागू माने सेमती न हो जाऊ भाया कहूँ है तो स्टेट विषय जानवा अच्छी हेक्साडेल्टिक सिस्टम हो गला भौमकारज हो गला जो डायनेस्टीज गुड़ा जतक सब अच्छा पुष्पगिरी यूनिवर्सिटी विषय जाना थाए पुष्पगिरी यूनिवर्सिटी कौन जना अच्छी क्या ठीक अच्छे पुष्पगिरी इज अ यूनिवर्सिटी विच इज so when विक्रमशिला उदंतपुरी और उदंडपुरी जगदाला ये सब यूनिवर्सिटीज गुड़ा तैयारी होता बिहार रे by different dynasties Guptas ही थिले primarily एपटे ओडिशा रे भौमकारज were ruling and they have the longest lineage of queens ruling continuous lineage of queens ruling पृथ्वी महादेवी एमती सब बहुत जन अच्छा and they had created Pushpagiri University बोली कहा हुए the 3 parts of it Lalitagiri Udayagiri Ratnagiri the diamond triangle of Buddhism जोटा ओडिशा रे अच्छी that is called a part of a university why am I trying to tell you these things because Odisha अस्मिता वाला part टा एबे जोर fad रे अच्छी because it is in fad it is expected out of you कि you know about these aspects of Odisha which are getting highlighted recently at different areas and arenas by the central government as well as the state government. Considering कि the same party is ruling at both the places, both their works becomes very crucial and you should be aware of what are getting highlighted. And जदि मु ओडिया अस्मिता कथा कहूची तमे ओडिया अस्मिता रे मु खाली डिस्ट्रिक्ट स्टेट ऑप्शनल स्पेसिफिक जिंस आउ details of culture खाली जानी बिनी I need to separately study about one thing which is extremely necessary that is the evolution of Odia as a language. It has to be prepared by everyone and it is not generally that people prepare. चौपाही सिस्टम रु आरंभ करिकी को लास्ट को इंस्क्रिप्शन रु आर्किक ओडियाटा आसीची को राजा बनै थिले कोठी कोन लिखाई छी हमें हाथी गुंफा इंस्क्रिप्शन विषय पढ़ी पढ़ी हालिया जे ता आगुरु बहुत सारा एरियाज अच्छी जोटी ओडियाटा को फॉर्म रे लिखाई छी ओडिया केमिति इवॉल्व करिछि सेटा गोटे लाइन देन ओडिया लिटरेचर रो इवोल्यूशन is another line they are two different things please remember कि one is the language रो evolution the other is the literature रो evolution and both are expected out of you एटा आमो बेली भी हमको ट्रांसक्रिप्ट बहुत लोगों को पचरा है बहुत लोगों को पचराई ओडिया माने जो माने लिखी थी कि आमे इंग्लिश नॉवेल्स पढ़ू तांको तो आगो ओडिया नॉवेल पचारिबे तापर ओडिया नॉवेल पचरला परे पंचसखा किए पचारिबे पंचसखा एरा विषय एक्सप्लेन कर पचारिबे पंचसखा एरा केतेटा थिला पचारिबे पंचसखा एरा आगुरु कोन आस्थिला परे कोन आस्थिला किए केतेले को केते हमर बुद्धिस्ट चार्य पद लिटरेचर रु किछटा पोएट्री लिखावा आरंभ होला सेतरे ओडिया किछटा थिला ओडिया सेठु इंस्पायर होला ए सब जिंस गुडा थरे विकिपीडिया पढ़ी देले कि थरे गोटे दुटा वीडियो जानी गले इट इज एक्सट्रीमली इजी what you need to do is understand कि there are few important crucial people that you should be very well aware of primarily from the perspective of Odia Asmita which is literature जे लिखी चंती जेमति जगन्नाथ दास जहाँ लिखी पंचसखा भितर जन बलराम दास जगन्नाथ दास एम समस्त इंपोर्टाट लोक तांको बही गुड़ा को बहुत दिन पर्यंत एबे मझी गोटे जेनेरेशन छाड़ीदेले बहुत दिन पर्यंत गाँ गुड़ाक घरे रखाई पूजा करा हुए जमीती गीताटा है नॉर्दर्न इंडिया रे समस्त घरे थाए आमर गीता थाउ कि न थाउ आमर यांक बही गुड़ा समस्त घरे थाए एगुड़ा सब जेनराली सोशल इवेंट्स भाव में पूजा कर जमी सत्यनारायण पालाटा जोटा एबे घर गुड़ाक छोट छोट करा आगुरु सत्यनारायण पाला बहुत लोगों को लेकिन करा सेमती जगन्नाथ दास जो बही लिखिं से दिन भजन से दिन पूरा बहीटा पढ़ा हम पूरा गाँटा बस सो इट इज अ कम्युनिटास और कम्युनिटी बिल्डिंग सिस्टम रो पार्ट दैट इज द क्रिटिकालिटी ऑफ दीज थिंग्स this middle generation jota am parents mane they were at a very different position wherein they had to earn more and make sure ki we are given the best lifestyle. That is why they migrated and with them came very less of our culture which is deteriorating, and that is what the Odia Asmita is trying to revive. माने आमको जी गप आम जेजेमा ही कि जेजे बाबा कि ऊपर जेनेरेशन टा बेसी कहनी ता ऊपर जेनेरेशन बेसी कही बिकॉज दे वेर देमसेल्व्स डेफिशिएंट दे वर फोकस्ड एट रीडिंग स्टडिंग एंड अर्निंग एंड दैट इज व्हाट इज अ कल्चरल गैप दैट इज गेटिंग एस्टाब्लिश्ड से आमको जानिया दरकार एक डिस्टेंस मु यूटिलिटीटा कहूँ माने एमती नुह जे खाली घोष जाइए तार रिजनटा कौन पे पचारुंट कि कौन बुझा कहते सेटा को मुझे जाना कहूँ तो मेक श्योर कि यू नो कि दैट टू पंचसखा एराज सेकेंड पंचसखा एराटा इंपोर्टेंट ए फर्स्टा इंपोर्टेंट फर्स्ट पंचसखा एराटा कौन पंचसखा एरा आगु किए आसी केतले सारला दास एरा थिला केतले चार्यपद एरा थिला चार्यपद टाइम्स मन रखा दरकार नहीं सीक्वेंस आम टाइम्स मन रखी कौन करिया मैक्सिमम टू मैक्सिमम को दुटा खंडे इनस्क्रिप्शन थी से टाइम्स मन सेकेंड सेंचुरी कि थर्ड सेंचुरी बीसी बस से तापरे रहा मनुमेंट्स गुड़ा जहाँ अच्छी क्रिटिकालिटी डू माने भारत एज अ वर्ड फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम इज मेंशन्ड इट हाथी गुम्फा इंस्क्रिप्शन भारत एज अ वर्ड हैज नॉट बीन मेंशन्ड एनीवेयर अक्रॉस भूखंड ऑफ भारत एनीवेयर एबे प्रेजेंटली जोटा समस्त भारत भारत यूज हाथी गुम्फा फर्स्ट टाइम भारत बोली लिखाई भारत तो आगु कौटी मेंशन कराई सो देयर इज नो इंस्क्रिप्शनल एविडेंस ऑफ भारत बीइंग भारत or the word Bharat being used for Indian subcontinent. That is the significance of Hathi Gumpha. It is these kind of significance that is expected out of you when they are asking questions, not कि कोणार्क 24टा चक अच्छी चक सब गोटे गोटे माने माने 24 दिन कि 24 घंटा को देखाए एमती सब जिनस नुह बेसिक्स विल बी नोन टू पीपल but what is critical and what is expected out of you is to appreciate them critically and the relevance of them in the current context. एटा सब जानिया दरकार एतिकी जिनस मु जतले कहबी सॉरी स्टेट ऑप्शनल वर्क एक्स ग्रेजुएशन पोस्ट हैज एनी ऑफ यू वर्कड के काम करछन हां करछन अपन वर्क एक्स टा भी अपन कोथरे काम करछन ब्रिलियंट ब्रांड मैनेजमेंट रे थिले तो please understand कि they will ask you possibly कि how will we leverage your brand management skills in terms of benefiting let's say some brand of Odisha, let's say OTDC itself, Odisha Tourism Development Corporation. How will a brand manager be contributing to that, or how will a brand manager be contributing to a brand called OMFED which is already generating 1,000 crores of revenue every year, but how do we use your skills in terms of getting and leverage? What is brand management, the traditional questions being there, but then primarily the utility aspect. So you need to think of brands that you should already be prepared with. For example, you have anthropology as an optional, you have brand management as an education, you take up TriFed or some case study and mention that this is a tribal brand that TriFed should promote through these interlinkages, forward and backward integration koriki, and the state government through these processes and means can actually get involved in it and hence establish a better ecosystem, and the brand can also flourish while ensuring benefits for the lowest rung of the society, that is tribals, who have been very much cut off from the traditional developmental process. So make sure you're prepared with this. What is happening here? You are interlinking too many things that you have done, and that shows a clarity in terms of your thought process. Confidence is first thing, but clarity of thought process actually supports your confidence because they know why you are confident. you're not confident out of the blue because you have just cleared mains, but you know what you're speaking and you know how you are speaking. That is why clarity of thought process is extremely necessary. It is not just about work-ex, it is about anything. Your optional, your graduation subject, and your, what is your graduation subject? Commerce. How will you link commerce with home science is a brilliant gamut that you'll have to think of. So it's difficult to think, but then the first thing is ki, in general, the bounded rationality theories and others where maximization of benefit is generally looked into, they start from homes itself. Economics and commerce, if I divulge their boundaries, home science is primarily looking into home economy and home commerce itself. And that is where you bridge in those practices. Home as an entity, home as a business or a corporate unit has to look into its own budget and its accounting processes, which have been traditionally taken up by women. While it is being taken up by men outside and women are entering that market, but primarily it has generally been taken up by women. Men have always been into physical work and physical labor, while home science has always been the area of women and women-led developments. And commerce can very well be linked into it because everything is based on commerce and finance. So think of it is what I'm trying to say. You can very much link sociology or be optional subject sociology କିଛି link କରିବା ଦରକାର ନାହିଁ ତ ସବୁ ହେଇଯିବ the usage of them in civil services and linkage across these 5 domains, that is state, optional, work-ex, graduation and post graduation, these things being there, what it shows is you have not prepared for the exam primarily by taking it superficially. You have consumed those subjects in such a manner that you have digested their gist and you can repurpose that digested gist at any point necessary. That is the hold that is expected out of you in case of home science or in case of anthro or in case of social. Specifically with home science, what happens is they take up a presumptive stance whereby they think that you have taken it for getting marks. You will of course have to defend that part ki no, I have consumed it in such a manner that you can ask me many things and I'll for sure interrelate some or other aspect of home science and I can answer it. I know you would have taken it for something else. Clearing the exam is at the end of the day the primary thing, but that is also necessary. And I'll tell you why it is necessary, because this year it is only OS or and other grade B services, right? So interview becomes extremely crucial because एठी interview खराब करले खाली grade कडार change होबनी grade change हिजबो हला a grade change हेले कोन हुई a grade B service for generally getting into a grade A service by promotion takes at least 5 to 6 years. In case of newer services, in case of older services it can take as long as 7 to 8 years. For example, the Odisha Revenue Service or Odisha Taxation and Administration, Taxation and Account Service, which are the subordinate services of OS and OFS respectively. They take very long. So what I'm trying to tell you is, effectively, if your interview does not go well, it is as good as you not getting selected, because you will end up being in a grade B service and you will have to reappear the exam again. So make sure that your interview time you are very well prepared in a very refined manner. जहाँ जहाँ मैं points कहूँ टिके देखी कि रखते भी you are at an advantage over others. है ला तो make sure कि से जो leverage तो जितने जगह पूरे ही हब्बो पूरे की तांकु convince करा ही जाऊ जे मैं बहुत बोला मु सेपट पचे मेंस रे जहाँ हम करते हैं इंटरव्यू तो मार्क्स मते तमे 180 190 दबो सेमती मते करकी जिबा अछि माने सेही फोकस जिबो 140 150 रे यदि कडार चेंज हिजो माने ग्रेड बी कडार तो चेंज होबने पूरा ग्रेड चेंज हिजो ग्रेड बी हे गेला ग्रेड बी सर्विस रे रहिला माने पुनी माने बहुत दिन जाय लॉस लागि पारे बहुत दिन जाय बहुत अबागिया भी लागि पारे तापर इच्छा हो जे आउ गोटे वर्ष देबी माने आई विल हैव टू अगेन प्रिपेयर फॉर इट एंड एवरीथिंग एंड बट नेक्स्ट ईयर पुनी पोजीशंस हैव again shrunk, the grade A positions have again shrunk comparatively. Next year आहुरी कम अछि यार तो there is no possibility कि एथर जदी ये होची next थर बहुत भलो हबो सेंती तो किछि guarantee नाही, and the format has also changed, so possibly there will be people who were only appearing for UPSC will be coming down here as well. खाली UPSC दोथरा लोक जे आगु दो नथलो UPSC समान भी आसी कि देबे एबे तो सेमती भी हे जाई पारे. तो whatever your preference OPS हो कि OS हो कि OFS हो, but grade A रे रहिबा has a very high advantage over others, because you start with a salary which is same as the collector that you probably would be reporting into, but you are still at the same salary. So that being there. So make sure कि से जिनस गुड़ा केबे ये करिवे नाही. Momentum of the utility of mocks. एबे मु mocks को आसीबी utility देखंतु. आपण मॉक्स भी जीवा आरंभ करी तो भाबंतु 3-4 दिन बाहरी गला आपण मॉक्स सब आसीजो कॉल फॉर आसीजो मॉक्स जीबे दी तीनटा देबे मैक्सिमम फर्स्ट तो दी तीनटा देबे जो थरटा बेस्ट हो ता पुठो देबेनी मेक श्योर ता पुठो देबेनी खुशी की डेंडी जे कि आ गोटे देबे जदी सी जदी तुमको पक्के देला तळे असुविधा हो जिवो बिकॉज कॉन्फिडेंस शैटर किए कला सी जाइथिले किए मु माने एट द एंड ऑफ द डे मु ही कली ना जो कॉन्फिडेंस बिल्ड होता है आग थर इवैल्यूएशन जोटा कि मते बहुत कॉन्फिडेंट कर देथिला यू नेवर नो ना व्हाट इज द क्वेश्चन दैट दे आर गोइंग टू आस्क व्हाई डू यू हैव टू बी अंडर कॉन्फिडेंट एबेठू एंड यू विल ऑफ कोर्स फाइंड ट्रांसक्रिप्ट्स ऑफ टू मेनी पीपल हु विल बी अपीयरिंग फ्रॉम सम और द एमती एठी किबा अन्य इंस्टीट्यूट जो माने अछंती दे हैड क्रिएटेड व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप्स प्रॉपर and they were helping and telegram groups and they were helping you out with transcripts. So anything that is deficient, I think I'll as far as I have spoken out टिके किछटा परे I don't think there will be deficient anything but जोगुड़ा माने कुहा हिची ट्रांसक्रिप्ट से भी आसी जीवो मु खाल्टर जे कि निजको एक्सपोज करिया दरकार नै सब बेले because my confidence is way more critical than me answering as I have told you because people have gotten higher marks by saying sorry and smiling at the panel rather than answering them. ठीक है मेकिंग श्योर कि ओनली फ्यू मॉक्स एंड द लास्ट मॉक बीइंग द बेस्ट मॉक जेबे होउची माने जेबे तुमको से कहि देले तीन जण कि बढ़िया कहूछ तमे भलो करिवो बस सरला तापर आ जिबो ही नाही पछे बहुत दिन से सरी न थाउ जिबार ही नाही जहा सरी निजे सारो बसी कि आउ जिबा नाही कहना से कॉन्फिडेंस ता बहुत दरकार हला बहुत कम लोकंकर थिबो तो जदी मिलुची कॉन्फिडेंस कोठु तले सेटा गैदर करके रखिया अछि इंस्टेड ऑफ डिसॉल्विंग इट हला तो कहीं से मोमेंटम टा इट विल कैरी टिल द डी डे माने इंटरव्यू डे पर्यंत इट विल कैरी मते ते भलो कहिथिले मते आंसर देथिली दैट इज हाउ आई विल एक्चुअली बी कंपोज्ड आई विल स्पीक इन सच अ मैनर दे विल बी हैप्पी एज वेल एटलीस्ट आई विल मेक श्योर कि दे आर सैटिस्फाइड the way this last panel got satisfied that is the way even if it's a first panel let it be if you're very happy and the panel is very happy let it be किछि दरकार नै तापर मॉक दबा कारण बहुत ट्रांसक्रिप्ट आसी जिवो सेठी जाई कि तुम एक्स्ट्रा सेमती किछि कहिबोनी कहिबा अछि कथा कहया अछि को आ चार पांच जन बसै कि पछरे कहि परिबो बट सेठी जाई कि तुम जदी निजो कॉन्फिडेंस मारी के आसीबो तापर पुणे थर्ड इंटरव्यू गलनी सेकंड खराब गेला थर्ड को गलनी से सेटा को कैरी करके नै जिवो ना सेकंड रो इंप्रेशन टा को निजो मुंडरे कि नाही आई वाज नॉट दैट वेल प्रिपेयर्ड बाहला पर भी कहबो मु तो एते भलो करनथिली एते भल से प्रिपेयर नथि इंटरव्यू इज अ वेरी साइकोलॉजिकल गेम दैट इज व्हाई आई टोल्ड यू प्लीज बी प्रिपेयर्ड विद द प्रोफाइल ऑफ द इंटरव्यूअर्स because you are now aware of what they are, how will they be carrying themselves. If a person is an OAS officer, if a person has worked as a collector, if a person has worked as a DG, you know how their thought process is, what are the kind of questions they may possibly think of. You have already psychoanalyzed them to a certain extent through their profile. It is not like you are going into a blind game. That is what I am trying to tell you कि तमे blind जीवो नाही blind जोटी से माने करिया चाहिए छाड़ दबो आसुनी इट इज एक्सट्रीमली क्रुशियल कि ब्लफ करिवो नाही तो मोमेंटम सेटा दरकार बाकी रहला पोस्चर जदि दूर रे बसैथिबे मेक श्योर कि यू सिट प्रॉपर्ली women are supposed to wear sarees as well सेदिन एमती स्ट्रेट हाथ दीटा गोड़ भीतर टिके गैप हाथ ऊपर बस ए हाथ हलिबो नाही हाथ एमिति ही पूरा टाइम थिबो हाथ हलिबो नाही मैक्स टू मैक्स इफ यू वांट सम जेस्चर्स काइनेसिक्स जोटा कोंती gestures use kariyati it is fine but then again it will be pointing a finger and generally this is how people do it when we debate as well we point out this way but then you are not debating because they are people of higher power unequals cause the interact so it's better to keep it this way and interact with them in a very soft and very sharp manner ebe asiba ame structuring of answer is extremely crucial movement बेसी करिवेनी अटायर विषय कहबे बहुत लोग अटायर विषय कहि देबे सेटा एबे दरकार नै स्ट्रक्चरिंग ऑफ आंसर बहुत भलो बा दरकार काहे कि व्हाट डज भलो स्ट्रक्चरिंग ऑफ आंसर मीन इट मींस फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल यू हैव हर्ड द क्वेश्चन प्रॉपर्ली and the second part is you are delivering what they are asking you it is not as if you are answering something that they have not asked you please listen to the question properly हला जेमति कि मते गोटे क्वेश्चन पचरा आइथला मु कहूची the question was मते पचरले अब डायरेक्टर को chairman निजे so apparently chairman's son was also appearing for UPSC mains that year and so he was very curious about it and he asked me कि Vishal, are you appearing for UPSC? Yes, sir. Have you cleared the prelims? Yes, sir. Are you writing the mains? हॉस्टल चाहते UPSC prelims clear कर कौन करती मेंस ही लिखती yes sir. Fine, great, all the best. सॉरी गला ना कौन इंटरव्यू बस सती कहली तापर कहले ठीक अछि. Your favorite institutions, your famous favorite institutions like Vision IAS, Subra Ranjan and others, they have been speaking about ethics, morality and such values of civil servants, a lot of things. Falana Dhikana, empty he was speaking a lot of things and he said they have been saying that civil servants need to be honest, they need to have integrity, they need to have maintain transparency. But as far as I understand, Vishal, there are two primary aspects which are necessary for a civil servant of three primary aspects which are necessary for a civil servant of present day. The first aspect as per me is technology orientation. Since you are an engineer, I will not ask you questions. I was very happy. Engineer ko matlab question milta kichi as nata tha. Since you are an engineer, I will not ask you questions on the same. You would be very tech savvy. Sure, sir. Thank you. The other two aspects being innovativeness and fresh perspective of a problem. And the third being ability to take care of the underprivileged section of the society and making sure development happens for them. See, how long have I been speaking? It has been 3+ minutes right now. And this is how long his question was as well. And he had way more embellishments in the question. So he was speaking for a very long time. He has already spoken ki what are the requirements of present day civil servants, but he was again answering that. He was answering. He has already spoken about 3 points. Now at the end of the day, he's asking me at the end of the question, he's asking me, what do you understand by this, Vishal? He has already elaborated for 3+ minutes and he's asking me to explain it again. How do I explain? You've already explained it, right? What is he expecting actually? Now, by God's grace or by some way, I thought I'll ask him for something else. I asked him, sir, may I explain this using an example? Sure, very well. So that is exactly what he was expecting. So if someone has already spoken for 5 minutes, you can't actually explain it further for 5 more minutes, right? It's going to be very redundant. कौन ही कहबी मु हाँ सर जत्न नेबी जे डेवलपमेंट करी छोट माने जो माने अच्छंती ग्राउंड लेवल ले कि मु ऑनेस्ट रहिबी कि मु टेक्नोलॉजी नुआ ना सिखिबी. Very redundant thing. That is exactly what he was speaking about. It is not expected out of me, or at least that is not what he is expecting. What is he expecting? By some logic, I asked him, sir, can I use an example? And I actually used an example. What example did I take up? I took up an example from ethics, wherein a person who was a collector at in UP had created during COVID, he had created a makeshift settlement form of setup, wherein the laborers, migrant laborers who were coming by because of touch being a stigmatic thing during COVID, they were getting quarantined. So that is why he had created a temporary form of settlement area where the migrant laborers were being harbored, so prior and quarantined, so that before they get into the society or get integrated into the society, they are at least safe. While doing that, he had also ensured that in that ecosystem itself, because they are getting quarantined for long times, he had asked them to come up with he had given them some problems and he had asked them to come up with solutions, and the problems primarily related to them and their issues as well as some other issues. And from that itself, he had created 3 groups who ended up creating companies. Now here development is happening using technology and for the lowest rung of the society by using civil servants and their intervention and innovation. So it is very much qualifying all the criteria that he had asked for. And he was completely quiet after that. Fine. So he did not even cross question once tapare. What is necessary is you meet all his requirements question. You may be using an example, you may again elaborate further, but using example is extremely essential. A particular incident को कहर अर्थ है be prepared with ethics or examples, or read them again, because you would have already gotten yourself prepared with ethics or example for the mains ना. तो सेथि ପାଇଁ टिके टिके आहु देखि देथिले, you can repurpose them whenever they want. मो पर पिला को मो पचाउछि सेम पैनल रे, when that person was asked कि some incident has happened, a fire has broken up, and a mob is now very angry, and how would you deal with this situation? He had again elaborated. Now this person gave some steps. He was cross questioned. Again steps, again cross question, again steps, again cross question. Now she was getting cross questioned completely thoroughly for like 7-8 minutes. And when he came out, I asked him ki cross question kichu pacharleni na. He was like, no, he probed me a lot. And the same person, the chairman himself, was not probing me, but was probing her. Possibly, I'm not saying it is appropriate, but possibly what is deficient, what would have been deficient in the answer, is one of the criteria or requirements that they were looking for. Try to meet them. So for meeting them, the first requirement is understanding the question and its requirement. The question can be very long at times, as was this case. He asked me, even at the end of the question, he asked me, do you remember the whole question now? So he was very well aware he was asking a long question. It was not as if he was blabbering shit. He knew very well he was asking a long question. And he was asking me if I remembered, or I wanted him to repeat it. Had I asked him to repeat it, it would have been blunderous. Then I was also remembering it. माने बहुत जन को टेंशन ब्लैंक हो जाता है, एते लंबा कथा हला बेलू से ब्लैंक हो जाइथिले, तो सेटा हेई नथिला. तो बी श्योर कि तमे सुनो भलो से आ ताको रिक्वायरमेंट ता कोन बुझो, and try using examples as much as possible, because they are very evidentiary. What is evidentiary? Evidentiary is something that has already been executed. It means it has already been successful, it is foolproof, and hence it is evidentiary in nature. You use evidentiary facts to support your answer, it is always going to be more fruitful. ठीक है. तापरे if you do not know an answer, you will take time to, you will ask them ki please wait for some time, can I please take some time to answer. Interlinking of ideas is also necessary, as I told you. How do they judge? Generally, what is the basis of judgment on their part? As I told you, my session is generally about understanding the interviewer more than preparing for yourself. Both logo kahibe. The clarity of thought and the transparency with which you are answering. How do they ensure clarity of thought? You speak very clear sentences, short, crisp, clear sentences, and you speak as soon as possible. Because if you are not speaking as soon as possible, what you are doing is you are not actually answering how you would have actually done it. You are thinking of what is socially acceptable or what would fetch you more marks. So transparency is established through immediacy of answering. But that does not mean if you are not able to structure an answer, you will still start blabbering and saying Better to better ki rahi jiba कहबा. But immediacy is always having an advantage, because it establishes what? Transparency, which is again a foundational value of a civil servant under ethics. ठीक है. The कौन गला? Clarity of thought and transparency is the first thing. Comprehension, ability to comprehend what question has been asked. This happens when questions are very long. Even in case of questions which are short, it can very well be a question of comprehension, wherein something has been asked about Odisha. How well you answer it, I'll come to that as well, answers and solutions. But এটা আগে কহি দউছে আগে bluffing করিবা নাহি. As I mentioned, bluff যদি সে ধরি দেলে, if you bluff and they do not get a hold of it, great, brilliant, you actually sailed through. But if it's a bad day for you, it is going to be extremely bad. The argument kariba nahi. Understanding of question and taking time to go understand, and interlinking of ideas. There's the 6 primary areas where they are understanding you. But there is another area where, for example, this question that they asked me, I gave them a solution देली कि मु सॉल्यूशन देनी मु तांको एग्जांपल दे देली एंड एग्जांपल थ्रू रे ही हिमसेल्फ फेल्ट कि सैटिस्फाइड कि हाँ दिस इज अ सॉल्यूशन ठीक अच्छे but at times they may ask you or had he denied ki no you don't use an example explain what you understand had he said this I would not have been in the same position I would have to change my answer according to the requirement of what he is asking exactly so when I'm answering something and they are expecting a solution out of you ensure two things one is interdimensionality the other is intersectionality why did I do this and this interdimensionality means political economic social religious historical other things ठीक है this is how it goes but there is an interplay happening at the level of society as well that is intersectionality how is this political aspect being linked with women how is this political aspect being linked with children how is it being linked with old age how is it being linked with old age women this is further intersectionality old age women and politics three factors it can be way more as well old age women politics and scheduled caste four layers again Hindu five layers so this layered form of understanding is what differentiates us from our non-civilian counterparts or normal society in general what is expected out of you is this finesse of understanding that my solution has to be extremely customized the customization has to be as per interdimensionality as well as intersectionality otherwise what will be happening is now let's say slum rehabilitation is an issue that they are talking about there is a Jaga mission Odisha is being very much praised about the same the erstwhile government was at least getting praised but there is an issue as well it mu out point ko should you criticize the government is the question critical appreciation is the way of functioning criticizing is not the way of functioning what is critical appreciation is what I'm going to exhibit abe hela now Jaga mission bisare pachara hoche you mentioned very well sir Jaga mission has been fundamentally very successful in ensuring its end goals it has been able to deliver what it was targeting for and hence has been a milestone scheme by the government of Odisha and it has been praised at national and international levels in terms of slum rehabilitation and rejuvenation. But there are certain issues that are coming up which could have been addressed had they been thought better. What is the issue? That is what we have to be pragmatically mentioning. कौन इश्यू होची ना जगा मिशन अंडर रे गोटे जागा जागा मिशन अंडर रे लोकन को कौन करा होची ना घर दिया होची किछिटा हैला ऑलरेडी बिल्ट अपार्टमेंट लाइक सेटअप्स आर बीइंग गिवन टू पीपल हु आर बीइंग rehabilitated from slums brilliant there are two things first semane jo micro ecosystem re rahi thile it was easier for them to stay there because they were delivering certain microeconomic services for example se slum ru 10 टा गुपचुप वाला बाहर की जाउथले सेठी उत्कल यूनिवर्सिटी टा थिला सेठी पई कंजम्पशन ताको मिली जाउथला कंज्यूमर मिली जाउथले एबे तमे जोउठी ताको रिहैबिलिटेट कलो सेटा सेठी मिलु नथिबे कंज्यूमर्स it is this is the case which has been traditionally seen in other rejuvenation programs but Odisha re something else has happened something wondrous has happened the eta कहबनी ये first point is something that happens in generally other states हैला but Odisha उल्टाटा एटा को काउंटर करिया पे कोन कला Odisha भलो जगह रे तंको घर देला सिटी सेंटर पाखापाखि ये जो उत्कल हॉस्पिटल पाखापाखि जो घर गुड़ा so these areas are where buildings have been built now what is happening is कि when these buildings are getting built they have primary locations and primary lands a person may be working extremely hard to earn sufficient money to buy a piece of land there or build a house there now you are getting it given in terms of a free benefits program to the underprivileged that is fine but that is also reducing the land available for the people who are working hard for it and want to buy a land in the central areas and that is also causing you to create no value out of extremely costly land. It could have been used for investments. ସେଇଠି ଉତ୍କଳ ହସ୍ପିଟାଲଟା ହେଇଛି, କାଲିକି ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ହସ୍ପିଟାଲ ହେଇଯାଇ ପାରିଥାନ୍ତା। ପସିବଲ୍, ଭେରି ମଚ୍ ପସିବଲ୍, ବିକଜ୍ ଇଟ୍ସ ଭେରି ପ୍ରାଇମେରୀ ଲ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡ। ପ୍ରାଇମେରୀ ଲ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡରେ ଯଦି ମୁଁ ସର୍ଭିସେସ୍ ମାନେ ବେନିଫିଟ୍ସ ଦେବି ତାହେଲେ ଇସ୍ୟୁ ହେବାର ଚାନ୍ସେସ୍ ବହୁତ ବେଶୀ ଅଛି, ବିକଜ୍ ଆଇ ଏମ୍ ଲ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡ ଇଜ୍ ଅଫକୋର୍ସ ଲିମିଟେଡ୍। I could have easily gotten them lands in the peripheral areas, but I'm giving them in the core. It means I'm reducing land for investments, reducing land for earned people, and hence reducing the value that I create out of that land, and hence the monetization of that asset called land is less. But this is how the analysis should be, and it can very well be spoken. ठीक है? So what could be done? जदि से पचारिबे, brilliant, good enough, say कि sir possibly what can be done is they can be trained further to create avenues and entrepreneurship processes so that they themselves become generation of value generators. तांकु skilling दियो, तांकु training दियो, ताले ये कर दे। तांकु तो फोन हटे कि नहीं आउट जगह रखिया कहबो ना, it becomes very illogical if you mention that। और कहि परिबा आगु को जो प्रोग्राम्स गुडा हबो से गुडा रे better areas which are not that highly monetarily important in terms of investment and other value generation, सेगुड़ा को हमें देखि परिबा तांको rehabilitation पाई। That, so this is how you criticize. You're not criticizing government, you're criticizing the thought process which could have been way more refined, and had you been there you would have thought this way, is what you're trying to establish. Had you been asked to create that exact program or scheme, you would have thought in such a manner, and hence you would have ensured that both the targets are getting achieved. One is generation of value from the land as well as rejuvenation and rehabilitation of people. This is what is essential. When criticize एमती करने जो खराब लोगो कि एमती खराब काम करचंदी एमती कहिबेनी, कहिला बेलको केमिति कहिबा अछि कहिबे, किंबा इंटरसेक्शनालिटीज विषय कहि परिबे, इंटरडाइमेंशनालिटीज विषय कहि परिबे। कोठी गोटे नेकी कोटे पहाड़ भितर रखी देले कि पहाड़ पाखे पाखे रिहैबिलिटेट, बायोडाइवर्सिटी डिसरप्ट होउची, सेठिकार प्रिस्टीन नेचर डिसरप्ट होउची, फ्लोरा फौना रो लॉस होउची, इंटरडाइमेंशनालिटी आसुची। इकोलॉजिकल दिनसटा को बहुत लोक भाबी नथिबे, इकोनॉमिक दिनसटा को बहुत लोक भाबी नथिबे, समते सोशल दिनस भाबी कि चलथिबे। पॉवर्टी एलिवेशन होउची थ्रू रिजुविनेशन एंड स्लम रीडेवलपमेंट। तो मेक श्योर सेटा मुंडरे ହେଲା। ଆଉ anything else you want me to speak about, or I am done on my part? कौन? अच्छा, see, I understand what you're trying to ask, but as you mentioned yourself, do this experiment if you want to. These two people have heard you already. Ask माने कहा को जाई कि कहिबे जे मु लेदर डिजाइन पढिची हैला, से तो आपन को कोन इमीडिएटली पचारिबो, से लेदर भूली जीवो, से डिजाइन सुनी कि से आगो आपन को कपड़ा वपड़ा विषय निजे ही पचार देबे जदी, ताले आपन जानि परिबे जे सेठी जो माने बसथिबे से माने पॉसिबली जे लेदर डिजाइन विषय जान नथिबे, दे आर आल्सो गोइंग टू थिंक इन द सेम वे। And if that is the case, you will have to make sure कि ये करिवे आपन जानिया दरकार पड़िबो। तो but extent of preparation is necessary। को एक्सटेंट जे प्रिपेयर करिवे, जतले से पचारिबे आपन को जे सर जे कुहंतु मते कोन लेदर डिजाइन विषय नुह, आपन को साड़ी पचारिबे कि what are the designs or presently what are the motifs that are being utilized in traditional Odissi saris or saris of Odisha। से फोड़ा शंख पसापल्ली सब जिनस मोटिव्स ठीक अच्छी, बट से आंसर दबार प्रोसेस केमती? सर even though I have studied primarily the designing of leather and other एटी कौन कली मु रिमाइंड कर देली जे सर साड़ी और लेदर अलग अलग जिनस हला, आपण पचारले बहुत भलो कथा, मु आंसर भी देबी बहुत भलो कथा, किंतु लेदर विषय पचारंतु टिके। तो even though I have primarily studied about designing of leather, as far as I have read and studied and experienced, these are the primary motifs that I find in the saris that are found in the state of Odisha. I find Posapalli design primarily in the Sambalpuri, the Poda Sankha design is found primarily in the Barampuri Pata, the Kotpat design has straight lines in them, the Khandwa Pata or the jo Gita Govinda Pata has poetry written over it, and it is very simple and plain, and it is generally Odia writings which are over it. So it can also be called a motive. Now you have also elaborated something that no, I know about it. I may not know all of it, but I know about it. But primarily, please focus on leather and its designing. And if you do not know, let it be. That is what you need to highlight. Sir, I have primarily studied leather and its designing, but in case of saris, this is what I have seen, or what this is what I have experienced. Experience is a better word because you again are a woman, so you are expected to know about it, even though it's a wrong expectation, but you are expected, and you are expected to know about it because the people around you would be wearing saris of such and such origin or genre. ठीक है आओ करेक्ट एथिक्स बहुत क्रुशियल हो आपनक एथिक्स एनिमल किलिंग कौटू आसूची लेदर केमिति प्रोक्योर करिया कथा व्हाट अबाउट द वायलेंस दैट इज एसोसिएटेड विथ दिस सप्लाई चेन कंप्लीटली व्हाट आर द काइंड ऑफ फैमिलीज हु आर इनटू इट कास्ट आसीजिबो एठी आपनकर कास्ट आसीबेनी कि चमार आसे चमार कर ये गुडा चमार को केस स्टडी जदि किछ अछि रखंतु पूरा तापर कास्ट एंड कास्ट बेस्ड वायलेंस रिलीजन एंड रिलीजन बेस्ड वायलेंस बिकॉज many Muslims are involved in such processes in the Ganga belt. So those things would come up and ethicality of the same would be asked. हाँ आ गोटे कथा है जिते questions पचरा होची fundamentally try to not give bland answers in terms of information. Try to mix, always try to take a stance on some value or moral. For example, मु जदि किसी question पचरले I know कि no this should not happen, yes this should not happen, yes this should not happen is fine, but yaar background ta hai. So as civil servants are expected to ensure probity in terms of governance, hence this is what I would do. So there is a value based backing to your answering process. एमती न जो पिकॉक पचारे भी आप आंसर देवे जो सर ट्रांसपेरेंसी इज एसेंशियल हेंस पिकॉक इज द नेशनल बर्ड ऑफ इंडिया सेमती आंसर ना जो किंतु जोठी दरकार जोठी आपन ओपिनियन और जोठी आपन कोटे एग्जीक्यूशनरी क्वेश्चन पचरा होची गिव सम वैल्यू स्टांस वैल्यूज एंड एथिक्स एंड मोरल्स इज एक्सट्रीमली क्रुशियल आपन मन पे एटा इजी ही जाई छी बिकॉज़ आपन को तो पढिया को भी कहै जाई छी गोटे पेपर टर्म्स आगुर भी समस्त पचरा होतला किंतु अधा लोक जान नथांती से वर्ड्स गुड़ा जोड़ा प्रोबिटी ट्रांसपेरेंसी हो ये हो ऑटोनॉमी हो अकाउंटेबिलिटी हो बहुत सारा जिनस अच्छे से सब बहुत लोग माने अभ्यस्त नथांती थाई थाई गोटे पीएसआई लोकटे थिबो कि गोटे पबाइड लोकटे थिबो एट मैक्स किंतु समस्त समस्त नथांती सब बड़े कि फिलोसफी लोकटे थिबो सो इट इज एक्सपेक्टेड आउट ऑफ यू एंड मेक श्योर कि से वैल्यू टाको देखो तुम बहुत जिनस कहले बहुत जिनस बहुत शुणी सारे सब एकाश खंजिया बहुत कष्ट जोठी जोटा मन पड़ा से करदे जोठी आपको लगिला जे नहीं यही जगह वैल्यूटा रहा कथा जमी आपको से कहले जे कास्ट बेस्ड पचारि पारे एथिक्स बेस्ड पचारि पारे ये कौन एथिक्सटा यूज करेंगे कौ एथिक्स स्ट्रक्चरटा कि कौ एथिक्स लॉजिकटा कि कौ स्कूलटा यूज करेंगे सेटा को आपन भाविक रखिथा सर एज पर डिओंटोलॉजिकल थियरीज दिस इज व्हाट आई थिंक शुड बी हैपनिंग और टेलियोलॉजिकल थियरीज और Nicomachean ethics as per Aristotle mentions this and hence I think sir this is what would be there. And take a stance, no issues with that. Primarily मैंने ethics कौन करे कि आपनकर गोटे हला मु जानी छी आ गोटे हला मु जानी कि कौन करिबी आ गोटे हला मु जानी कि करला पर स्टॉक केमिति जस्टिफाई करिबी कौन जस्टिफिकेशन मु दउछि निजको एटा करिया पे भाबंतु गोटे वायलेंस होछि हला मु जानी छी मु किछि करूनी इन इटसेल्फ तो मु तो इनएक्शन रे पळी गली हला मु जानी छी मु जाकी बाडीबा आरंभ कली हला काना मते बाडीबा भल लागे भूल लोकटा जिए ताकू ही बाडौची भल काम करूछु किंतु मते बाडीबा भल लागे बोली करूछु this is not what is expected out of you. So the rationality is where you give the logic of your action and that exactly justifies your stance. ସେଇଟା ଇମ୍ପୋର୍ଟାଣ୍ଟ ଆଉ ସେଇଟାକୁ ହିଁ ସେ ଜାଣିବାକୁ ଚାହାନ୍ତି ସେ ରାସନାଲିଟିଟା ଆସିବା ବହୁତ ଦରକାର ଆପଣଙ୍କୁ ସେଇଥିପାଇଁ ଏଥିକ୍ସର ଭ୍ୟାଲ୍ୟୁଜ୍ ଗୁଡ଼ା ୟୁଜ୍ କରିଦେଲା ମାନେ ଆପଣଙ୍କୁ ଗୋଟେ ଲଜିକ୍ ଦେବା ପାଇଁ ଇଜି ହେଇଗଲା କାରଣ ସେଇଟା ଅଲରେଡ଼ି ଏଷ୍ଟାବ୍ଲିଶ୍ଡ डिओंटोलॉजिकल एथिक्स हो टेलियोलॉजिकल एथिक्स हो कि जहाँ भी हो माने जितकी सब एथिक्स गुड़ा अच्छी यूटिलिटेरियन एथिक्स हेगला ये समस्त सब ऑलरेडी एस्टैब्लिश्ड people generally know about them and these people who have been professors faculty they all for sure know about them because everyone would have done a PhD कला माने तो फिलोसफीटा आगो को पढ़ा प्रथम दुईटा सब्जेक्ट था फिलोसफी पढ़ाती से एटा सब जानी था Utilizing them is not going to show off or anything. It is going to actually make you seem learned. And if they ask you to why do you know such things, your option is you mentioned it very well. Ethics as a paper has been integrated, and that is how I have started knowing about it. Good enough. ସେଠାରେ କିଛି ଅସୁବିଧା ନାହିଁ। ଆଉ କିଛି ନାହିଁ ଆପଣଙ୍କର? କିଛି ନାହିଁ, ଠିକ୍ ଅଛି। ଚलो, thank you very much. I hope you do well. Pattanaik Bollywood style